Welcome once again to this time, the second edition of the Education magazine. Well, it's great to be back because it's slightly different to what we've done before, because previously we were all doing it remotely. Because now I have the joy of welcoming Chris to the studio with me. Chris, it's good to be back, isn't it?
It is good to be back. Yeah, it is good to be back. It's quite funny, really, that after, obviously, the disruption of the last 2 years, we're actually able to sit in the studio together for a change. You say it's always been something we've done remotely, so good to be here.
I quite enjoyed the remote sessions, though, did you?
I did, yeah. I think it was good, and we had Charlotte join us as well, who no doubt will join us this season as well. But it's really good to have the variety of coming in as well as being away.
I think so. I think I prefer to be back in situ, to be honest. And there really is quite a number of things to talk about in the upcoming series. We're going to have lots of guests on, and very inspirational guests too, I must say, because not only are we going to be talking about the typical things that we're used to, talking about school bullying, emotional difficulties, and the difficulties that so many people have in getting a diagnosis. And that's a real problem, Chris, isn't it?
It is.
Particularly with the diagnosis of autism. People are on waiting lists for a very, very long time. Or ADHD.
Yep, and mental health difficulties as well. Another long one that we talked about in a previous episode, obviously, with CAMS waiting lists and how under-resourced that provision is. And although, both under the Equality Act and under the various other educational acts that we talk about in our series and deal with day to day, although diagnosis isn't actually needed, and this is something that often gets lost in translation, the reality is, just as a shorthand and because of the awareness of services, it really can prove to be quite key to accessing those services, even though it shouldn't.
It's also difficult for schools too, isn't it? Because parents looking for schools will want to have a diagnosis because they will say they've got a peer group for children, let's say, with autism. Yeah. And it may not be easy for them to get the placement unless they have a diagnosis to wait for.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, some schools, particularly maybe in the independent sector, won't take pupils or take referrals from pupils that don't have kind of the key diagnosis that school caters for. And again, there are always exceptions to that because you may have many of the traits of an autistic person not necessarily qualify for the diagnosis. But again, as you say, there can be a lot of confusion, a lot of uncertainty until that diagnosis comes through. And oftentimes, certainly anecdotally, we hear a lot of relief when people, which seems counterintuitive, you've just been diagnosed with disability, yet you're relieved. Yeah. I think sometimes they just like the fact that now I know what it is, rather than that uncertainty around it. So it's a really important step. And as you say, unfortunately, it's something that a lot of people have to fight for.
Absolutely. And we're also going to be talking to, in the upcoming series, that is, to Senko, who has a number of complaints, really. But the primary complaint that they make is that the policies that are in place for children with special educational needs are not really fit for purpose. And she's going to be complaining about that, Chris. And what she says is she'd rather give up the job. She found it all too stressful.
Yeah, and it's a real shame whenever that happens, and all the more concerning when, as you say, someone who is working within the system feels that the system is not working as it should. And it's something that obviously you and I challenge on a daily basis for our clients. And, it's always a real shame. And, we do see, as we have recently with the ALN Act, which I know you mentioned earlier and we talked about in our last episode, how with new laws, you tend to find those inconsistencies more frequently because in practice, everyone is on our side and their side is still learning and getting to grips with new legislation. And that's particularly challenging where old legislation's been in place for 25 years, which was the case previously. And, you do get lots of inconsistencies and that can cause additional stress. One of the things we criticised, for example, the ALN Act again, was the fact it was putting a lot of work on the shoulders of SENCOs or ALNCOs as they are in Wales. And that can cause concerns. And, one of the members of the community came forward to want to tell her story. And I think that's one of the themes, isn't it, about this series, is we are having new and different voices from the community coming through, some with concerns, like that particular individual, but others as well with success stories.
But I suppose the policy, the main complaint that she has is the policies that are in place universally across not only Wales, but in England.
Of course.
Basically, and the kind of episodes where schools are being under so much pressure to promote themselves, to say how well they're doing. And sometimes the children with special educational needs are are being misrepresented. That's one of the points that she makes.
Absolutely. And again, we see that all too often. I mean, we've had children come to us who maybe even in year 9 or year 10, and they've been in mainstream schools the whole time. And then all of a sudden you realize that child has moderate learning difficulties or has a speech and language need. That means they haven't actually been taking in any of the lessons because of the nature of their needs. And it's all the more tragic, I think, when you make those discoveries later in educational life, and perhaps a relief that the law in both England and now Wales carries on to 25 or potentially up to 25, because it gives longer to redress those issues. But it's always a concern, as you say, where, you have policies in place or statements being made by bodies, sometimes in good faith, not mostly in good faith, to say we can or at least try to help, but they just don't have the expertise. I think people would be much better off if there was just a frankness about limitations, because they say, okay, it's not you, then who is it? And they can move elsewhere. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of attempts to make, square pegs fit into round holes, and that's just not going to work.
And I've been saying that about bullying, didn't I? I said that it's the same thing happens. Schools tend to be so reluctant to admit that bullying is taking place. They sometimes lose track of how many repercussions can come out as a result of that. Because if you actually address it and say, actually, we are not, we have got a problem here with bullying, we can then say that we're going to do something about it. It's when you bury it under the carpet, it's when all the legal issues come about.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that's a lot to do with training, knowledge, and specialism. I think, it's something we're coming increasingly to learn now, even since I started practice about, 8 years ago now, where we saw that SEMH needs were kind of known, but they weren't really, social, emotional, mental health needs. And of course, they can lead, not always, but they can lead to behavioral difficulties, not necessarily bullying, but sometimes, outbursts, sometimes even violent outbursts, where that child's regulation has just fallen by the wayside. They become dysregulated. And by that point, they're very overstimulated and sometimes often very scared, and they lash out. And we're coming to understand that, there's that old saying, isn't there, behavior is a form of communication. And I think a lot of schools don't necessarily know how to engage sometimes with, well, if this child is perhaps more frequently, dysregulating, or these issues are coming up more frequently, this child, yes, we can treat it as a disciplinary issue, which they have the power to do, but often that doesn't sort the problem. Sometimes it does, of course. But for children who maybe have underlying needs, there needs to be a better appreciation that specialist intervention may be required, to help them emotionally regulate, or whether it's sensory regulation, to help them stay calm and cool in the learning environment, and can often be a prevention. But yes, there can sometimes be a desire on the parts of some schools and some professionals to minimize those needs, and that can often, as you say, lead to the bigger issues down the track, rather than those that say, let's meet this head on.
And too much promotion of how well the child's getting on. Picking out little selective ideas of, little snippets of the child's profile that say, well, actually, isn't the child doing really well there, and missing out the sensory point, for example.
Yeah, it's such a balancing exercise. It's not easy, because you don't want to be, I can understand for teachers, obviously I'm not a teacher myself, but, I can understand the desire not to be overly negative. And I think there was, in history, particularly with those with learning difficulties, there was too much negativity, particularly, in many years gone by, where they were treated more as a problem than as pupils to be helped. Whereas now, there's been perhaps a tendency to lean the other way and focus perhaps too much on the positives, and then, as you say, either overlook or try to minimize the challenges. And it's like anything, it's a balancing act. You can't pretend the challenges or the deficits in skills aren't there. They're there to be met. That's the whole point. You have, there's a saying, what gets measured gets improved. And I think that's very true, all the more so with children with learning difficulties and disabilities, is that, we need to find the challenges, understand them, and support them. And while we can use positive language around it, we shouldn't do so to the detriment of acknowledging the issues that still need to be worked on. So it's a tough call, but it is a problem we see where schools are saying everything's great, and parents are saying, but my child's coming home and is absolutely petrified of school, and we just don't know why. And you're talking two different languages at that stage, and it's never helpful.
Contrast the behaviour, it's so dramatic.
Yeah.
One presentation at school, child doing reasonably well. The other presentation, total meltdowns at home. home.
Absolutely.
And we see that quite a lot, don't we, Chris?
We do, unfortunately. And most of the time, and I'm very pleased to say, we do get to the bottom of it. But it would be nicer, I'm sure for you as well as me, if that could be resolved at the school level and they never needed to see us, if you know what I mean. That would be great, wouldn't it? Absolutely. Is that parents, could just, and schools had that the resources available to them and the knowledge available to them to kind of just work it out. That's always the best.
And of course, we're going to be talking about inspirational people. And we've got a treat for you, because not only is the episode today's episode, we're going to be talking to someone quite inspirational, but upcoming episodes, we're going to be talking to some young people who are really making a difference. Chris, and we talked about one.
We did, yes.
Later on in the series, I mean, a young lady, 15-year-old, who's doing so much to try and help others, because she says it wasn't provided for her.
It is wonderful. And again, much like today's interview, which we'll come on to in a moment, we felt that it was really important for this series to show, obviously, the success stories, because as much as you and I deal with a lot of the challenging situations and we help people through those difficult times, and of course, I'm sure a lot of the viewers are familiar with those challenging times, I think it's really important to show the other side as well. And you and I have the privilege of working with children, young people and their families for a long time. And I know you've mentioned on your Facebook stories about when you've met up with people who you've helped years gone by, and they've been working in a profession, and they've moved on with their independent skills, maybe they're living semi-independently, and I've had those stories as well. They're fantastic. We feel it's really good for the community to see those as well, so that whilst the people watching may not be there, maybe they're going through a challenging time, they can hopefully see the other side, that even if things aren't great now, hopefully if you keep moving forward, keep making that progress, eventually you can see that positive side of things.
Yes, and a few months ago, I met Paul Gurnham, who happens to be quite an inspirational character. Someone I met actually just by chance, and he started telling me the story. I was bowled over. I said inspiration because really he is an inspirational character, and he has so much to tell you, to actually be positive over, and the experiences that he's had, and how he's overcome those difficulties, and really has been such a remarkable person, and who's made such a remarkable difference for so many people. And Chris, you had the benefit of interviewing him, didn't you?
I did. It was a real privilege, as you mentioned, obviously you met him by chance, and I think he made an excellent impression on you, and he certainly did to me, and I certainly hope he does with the viewers. I'm sure he will. A fascinating man, a man who I describe in the interview you're about to see has lived many lives, and what came across, when we were talking about the work he's doing now, how he actually started, in a special school, getting special educational provision. And I think that just came out naturally, and wasn't something I was aware of pre-interview. And it was fantastic for that to come through. And again, show that positive side of things, that, yes, obviously there are times that can be challenging, and we need to work together to go through those challenges. It is not for people just to face alone, which is what you and I do as a job. But it's fantastic to see that for people like Paul, who now live these fascinating, wonderful, fulfilling lives, and it was amazing to listen to him talk about his life now, to hear about how he started, the people that supported him both as a child and now as an adult, before he was starting his charity, Boomerang Cardiff. And it's a fascinating interview. I hope you all really enjoy it.
And Chris said it, Boomerang Cardiff. Let's listen to Paul's story, because not only are you going to hear what Paul has to say about what he's done to overcome some of the problems he's had in his life, but Chris has the benefit of interviewing him. So let's watch that interview now.
So tell us a bit about Boomerang and your work in the community.
So Boomerang Cardiff was established back in 2016 due to my own wrongdoings, downward spiral in life. We named it Boomerang after like a little think tank exercise with me and my friends, because I wanted to do something positive for people who found themselves in the situation I was in. Hence a boomerang. You throw a boomerang out, boomerang comes back to you. So the idea was, it's Boomerang Cardiff. If we throw enough good vibes out there, good vibes will come back to us. At times I think it's quite selfish, but also can I get a huge reward internally from seeing someone else succeed and be happy. However, off the back of that, to date, we've been able to help 20,000 families. So the selfless act you may call it, actually is a selfless act in our community. So 8 years ago, I was homeless through no fault, a bit fault of my own, because I wasn't planning efficiently within my own work. My landlord sold the house. It was a private rented accommodation. I had 3 weeks to get out. Bang, I hit hard times. I had a successful wedding and events business, loving life. But then I found myself sleeping in the bush, sleeping in a car, in a van, until I got my own keys back to my own unit, because the staff used to have the keys. I kept it to myself for around about 3 months. Nobody knew I was sleeping rough. They all thought I was finishing work and driving up to Lamrumney, where I lived. But I wasn't. I was taking a decoy somewhere, coming back to the unit, sleeping in an industrial unit. Things got dark. Things got very dark. I wanted the pain to stop. I felt like a failure. I let my mum down, my dad down, myself down, my dog, because I had a little dog at the time, Gizmo, my best friend. And yeah, I wanted the pain to stop, so I stupidly attempted to take my life. I went to the bridge, Severn Bridge, got out of the vehicle, in tears, a truck beeped, my dog barked, and it was like a light bulb had been turned on. I'm like, what am I doing? I absolutely, erratically broke down, got in my car, blasted music, went over the bridge. I had more peed off that I had to pay for to get back over the bridge. So yeah, that was a bit of a nightmare back then. Looking back, I can laugh and reflect, because I didn't want to die. I just wanted the pain to stop. I wanted the feeling of hollowness and shallowness and just emptiness to leave my body. However, that was a long time ago. I got through the worst of it. I created something positive through that. I went back to my unit, started working a lot more, got myself back on track, met my amazing partner, who I'm with today. I now have a 4-year-old child. Along the process of that, we started Boomerang. So Boomerang Cardiff was the name. We started to help 100 working. My aim was 100 working families. However, that was October the 29th, I got the keys. So I done a video on Facebook. I'm like, I got the keys. I was so buzzing and happy, an empty shell of a unit. By January, we'd helped some 657 families.
And this was 2017, January
2016, 2017.
Wow.
It was just crazy.
Yeah.
And then mum fell ill. My mum's health was always up and down. She was in hospital. And it was her who said to me about, I finally opened up about my feelings and about the bridge and stuff to her. And she said, just go for it. What you got to lose? At the end of the day, you got your business back on track. You can always come home. So just go for it. However, she fell ill. And then we managed to tell her I was having a baby. Not me personally, but my partner. And then March, she died. She passed. So I had, again, a dilemma to reflect on myself. What do I do? And I seriously thought, right, Paul, you can go down the downward spiral here again. No, it ain't happening. So I sunk myself into work. Absolutely sunk myself into it. I was doing 18, 20-hour days. But that is why Boomerang became so known, so successful so quickly, I think, because the volunteers around me all understood what I was going through. So they wanted to help even more. And it was a collective team effort. And a load of the people who were there at the beginning are still with me now. They're now employed full-time by the charity. They have their own flats. They have their own lives. They pay into society. They contribute. They see their kids, see their grandkids. The one, which is Rodri, he inspires me daily. When I first met him, he was like, head down, wouldn't say boo to a goose. Now he's like, morning boss, do you want a coffee? I'm like, don't call me boss, I hate it. So he says it even more just to wind me up. But yeah, like I said, we set out to help 100 working families. The floodgates opened. We identified that, hang on, we can't keep this up as a sustainable income. It was taking months and months to create the party centre, to pay the bills. We were helping more than we were actually taking money. We struggled to get funding because of the different funding pots out there, where they it's a tick box. You have to look after one group of people. And I wanted to be inclusive. I wanted to be open. I wanted to help. There's no tick box for working people. And for whatever reason, some people don't work, some people can work, some people choose not to work. But I didn't want to get into the nitty-gritty of why we're helping people who don't work and what disabilities they have. Are they from an ethnic background? Why am I helping people? I just wanted to help humans. And I didn't want anybody to fall on the times that I fell through. And we done a focus group. We asked 44 support workers, social workers, community engagement officers, people who really listen to the community. What's the route? Where do we go forward? And we agreed on a referral process. So if you're homeless, if you're on benefits, if you're disabled on pension, you get help from the local authority because it's a means-tested benefit. So once you get means-tested benefits, there is more help there for you. So we done a referral process. Cardiff Council done a service level agreement with us, which was fantastic. Enabled us to have a bit of security of income. I was able to employ one or two other amazing funding opportunities come our way with these organisations who funded us like for a van, a one-year salary. And before we knew it, it was like, wow, look what we got here. And here we are 5 years on. We've listened, we've learned. I've messed up many times, but I'll mess up once. Once is my mess up. Twice is a choice, and I'll never make it a choice to mess up. I learn very quickly. I adapt and I reflect. And I'm proud to say, 5 years on, over 20,000 families helped, 16 staff employed, 4 vans on the road, 3 locations. We've got a community hub called PIF, Pay It Forward, over in Tremorfa, which enables local football sides, rugby sides, sporting sides to train indoors in a safe, warm, dry environment. We also do on a Friday like a fit and healthy course where it gets kids off a computer screen, off a laptop, off an iPad, and gets them over socialising. We're also looking at Early Learning Wales, so with liaison collaborative thinking with local authority about teaching. We're not personally teaching, but bringing on people who can teach interaction, adults and kids. And the one which is close to my heart is kids with learning difficulties or sensory needs. Everybody knows there's lots of red tape, bureaucracy, barriers in front of funding pots available to them. So what we try to do is listen to the community, find out what the need is, and I'll sit with the trustees and the chair, and I'll pretty much throw my dummy out the pram and say, this is what's happening. Because yes, you need finances to secure it and bring in specialised people, but ultimately, as long as your running costs are covered, which we are 95% there of getting them covered via a sustainable revenue stream, the rest should slot into place. So from now, over the next 3 years, I will be doing more random projects for the benefit of our communities and individual groups. And I'm proud and chuffed I'm in a position to say, do you know what the hell, let's do it. Come on. Because I know I'm not going to change the world. But what I do know is I can change the world for that one person. And in turn, it's paying it forward. And if everybody pays it forward in society, that's the society I want to live in. A lot more happier society, a lot more collaborative thinking society where together is better. We've all learned a lot now from this pandemic. So let's all keep learning together and keep moving forward.
That's fantastic and fascinating story, Paul. I mean, I think a lot of people watching will resonate with that incredible, story from that real low point that you discussed, on the bridge and the way you were feeling and also your personal circumstances being homeless to then this incredible achievement, in such a short space of time, really, to helping out all these different communities. And it was great to hear about all these different projects. So if I may, I'm just going to take you back to a couple of things you said, if I can, to get a bit more information. So you talked about, obviously, that conversation with your mother, after you were starting to open up about the experiences you had, and then Boomerang kind of formed and you'd started helping. So what actual strategies, what form of help were you giving to these kind of working families that you mentioned that may be facing homelessness?
We identified back then, and nobody becomes homeless from not having a sofa. Nobody becomes homeless from not having a wash machine. But what happens is that if you're working and you're paying your way and you're paying your rent, your TV license, your council tax, everyday bills, you haven't got that disposable income. If your washing machine packs in, or your sofa breaks, or your over-energetic child breaks your bed, which is quite a common cause because they're jumping up and down on the bed, they haven't got that barrier no more. It seems to be, I remember 20 years ago, I was told you're never no more than 3 pay packets away from becoming homeless. Now it's 1. Gosh. That's the reality of it. Nobody got that residual income or that disposable where they can put aside in a separate bank account, should I split from my partner, should I fall on hard times, should I lose my job, I'm secure for 3 months. No one is no more. You're not secure for 2 weeks, especially if you're private renting. I wasn't fortunate enough to get a social house. I've always private rented. I've always worked. I am pleased that things have changed. The local authority are helping now, especially because of this pandemic. They are trying to help more working families. But what I believe needs to happen, and a lot of other organisations, we need to stop this means-tested benefits on certain members of our society, or not all society, to enable help for anyone. Because just because you're on benefits and your sofa breaks, or you're working your sofa breaks, just because you're working don't mean you've got more money to get it covered. So it all needs to be looked at from a wider angle. And I am happy that the Welsh Government, Cardiff Council are fab. They are trying to introduce more schemes, more ways of people managing their money. A lot of it is, me personally, mine was down to my mismanagement of money, not prioritising for a rainy day. So a lot of it's down to prioritisation of money. Do you go bingo 4 nights a week and then moan when you've got no money? Do you go to the pub 4 nights a week and then moan when you've got no? You can still have these luxuries in life, but skim it down to one time a week. Everyone will have an individual need for their own pay, their own money, their own costs of living. I think everyone needs to reflect on themselves and go, right, okay, what are my costs? What is my income? What's my disposable? How much can I put to one side? Can I certainly do that a hell of a lot more now. I constantly put money away for a rainy day, to the extent where I welcome a storm, bring it on, because I know I will survive this one. Although the pandemic has been really challenging. But yeah, it's supposed sometimes, but you don't know until you get older.
Of course. And understandably, as you say, sometimes you don't, sometimes you can't help. As you described, there are many working families that you help, for example, where because of their income levels and because they may not qualify for certain benefits or what have you, they aren't actually able to put away that funding. And as you say, then a washing machine breaks or a sofa breaks. And then, of course, there's this huge hole in their finances. So Boomerang then helps provide these families with that equipment.
Back before the referral process, it was like, we collect it. I was like a madman with like too much energy. I'd be on the van all day. I'm in St Mellons, I'm in Llanrumney, I'm in Ely, I'm in Bridgend, I'm in Porthcawl. I'd be all over South Wales, South and East Wales, mainly Facebook Live videos. Hi guys, I'm in your area. Anybody got anything? I had a huge Luton van, 3.5 ton, and I'd fill it 10 times a day. I'd be back and forth, just driving around, trying to sing as I'm listening to radio. I can't sing for I won't even go into that. But I was having fun. I was enjoying life. I had a meaning, I had a purpose. And then we quickly identified that, hang on, we were helping out for all free. Look, guys, give us a donation. Some people were fantastic, giving us for like £40 for a white item, a fridge, a fridge freezer, a cooker, a washing machine. It goes into the pot to pay the bills, the rent, utilities, insurance. I never, ever anticipated being as big as I am with the organisation. I just wanted to help 100 working families over a year, have a little party centre to pay for the running of this and focus on my own business.
Of course.
However, my path in life changed. And am I glad it's changed? Damn right, I'm glad it's changed. Because some of the people I helped throughout that way, some decisions I've made bounced onto other decisions which have massively impacted positively in our communities. the people I work with, my team are just, they're family to me. They're truly amazing. And I'm very fortunate, and I'll always be thankful for that. But at somewhere along the way, we had to have structure for the charity. I believe in other structures there. Yes, we have to charge for certain items because certain landlords can afford it. They come down to the shop or the furniture outlets we have under the PIF hub, and they can afford to buy a second-hand sofa, a second-hand fridge. Some families can't. They physically just cannot. So the referral process is set up in place to, I don't believe in putting a plaster on things. Let's look at the root problem, why you can't afford a £50 donation to provide you with a bed for your child. Why is it when you're moving into an empty property, you have no money when you move from a furnished property? Is the furnished on lease? Are you leaving it there? Is it that old and destitute? So we try to overcome and completely look at the individual. However, some people aren't forthcoming with that information. Lots of different charities work in different ways. And I don't want to be a handout. I'm not here to be a handout. I want to be a hand up. And if it means that the person I'm giving a hand up in life to, you have to have a 5-10 minute conversation with me, because in essence, we're giving you the value of £300 worth of furniture, then that's what we expect. Because not one person who I've sat and talked to who we've helped for free, completely free, haven't cost them a penny, not one person have ever moaned, complained. We've given them a white fridge, a black cooker, and a silver fridge freezer. So in your kitchen, you've got 3 different kind of appliances. They're over the moon because they work. But then that could be in the morning. In the afternoon, then you'll have somebody who wants a white cooker, a white wash machine, white tumble dryer, white fridge freezer. It's just not doable. But then they'll moan that we're not helping them. So every person has a different opinion on how the help should be given and received. We're not here for handouts. We're here for hand-ups. Yeah. All items we offer is fit for my mum, fit for my daughter, fit for my sister, fit for my brother, and fit for purpose, good working order. I will never give out a mattress with stains on. I'll never give out a mattress that I wouldn't be happy to sleep on. One of the misconceptions that people have for charity, I say that word lightly because people think I'm getting rid of my mattress. But it's got a big, huge sweat stain on, or a chocolate stain, or a lipstick stain. They say to us, oh, well, you're giving it to people in need. They'll sleep on anything if they've got nothing. I'm sorry, if that's your opinion on the people we're helping, I'd rather not take your help. Because that says a lot for you, for your human status and what you believe in, what help is given. Because that's not paying it forward. That's being selfish and just trying to save you money by taking it on the tip or paying for rubbish removals.
So do you feel that because you were kind of in, as you say, in that same situation really as a lot of the families you helped, does that not only help you understand them, but do the people that come to you for help, do they feel, is there something that they get a lot out of the fact that you've been in their position? Does that help them feel perhaps less judged or feel more open about their circumstances at all?
Oh, most definitely. The majority of the staff on the ground, the ones who are forward facing the customers when they come in, the people we help, have all been homeless. 11 individuals we've helped off the streets of Cardiff, 8 of whom have been employed via me, 8 of whom have all been given flats or access to a private rented accommodation. We've kitted them out, we've furnished them, we've upgraded some of their furniture, because over time, rightly so, they're putting the effort in, they want a bit of effort, they want a nice place to live. I get that. However, they put in a hell of a lot more than they take out. And when people come to our unit and they speak to us, we're also like a take no rubbish sort of team, because people will come to us with a story and we can quickly identify, we can sympathize, we can show empathy towards the story. But unfortunately, there are people out there who try to manipulate that story. And each one of us have stayed in probably one of the major hostels in Cardiff, one of the nice bushes in Cardiff, slept in a car in Cardiff, or a doorway in Cardiff. Rodri, who I mentioned earlier, 11 years he lived in a doorway in city centre of Cardiff. He was on and off 11 years in that doorway. Look at him now. He's my aspiration, inspiration. He empowers me. He's just truly amazing. And I'm thankful to whoever's above that I had that bad spout in my life that made me cross paths with him. And then when we get people coming in saying, oh, I've tried that, I'll quite often turn to Rodri or turn to Dave, who survived 2.5 years in a major hostel in city centre Cardiff, Tigabaith. 2.5 years in a hostel is a long time. In a room no bigger than this. It's a tiny little room. It's like a prison cell. Prison cells are bigger. And he still volunteered for me during that time of homelessness. But now he's my operations manager because he can empathize with the people we're helping and really understand them. And we know that not one glove fits all. We know that not every person coming through has the same story. We're here to try and help those who are helping themselves, not taking advantage of the situation, not feeling entitled, because we collectively feel that no one's entitled to nothing. You're entitled to a safe life. But that doesn't mean that you're entitled to top of the range furniture, top of the range beds, top of the range house. Life is what you make of it. Yeah, there's people out there who've been dealt a bad card. There's people out there, I know now, there's people, mums living with 5 kids in one room and who would absolutely take off someone's arm to go and have a 3-bedroom flat. But then there's people living in a 2-bedroom flat who still are not happy because they want the best of everything, but they're not prepared to put the work in. Who am I to judge? I'm not here to judge. What I'm here to do is to make sure the public of Cardiff know that when they donate to us, I will do my utmost with every ounce of blood, sweat, tear in my body to ensure the right help goes to the right people at the right time.
It's a fantastic charity, and I think it's fantastic that idea you had of the name Boomerang and that philosophy of pay it forward, throw it out, it comes back, and that's really been true for you, hasn't it? As you say,
definitely.
The last kind of 4 or 5 years, really growing and offering all these different support for clients, and then some of those who come on to become staff members, as you say, key staff members to you.
Oh yeah, vital staff.
Huge inspiration, particularly those, you say, with Roger 11 years on the streets. Yeah. And your other colleague 2.5 years on the streets, now they in safe, stable accommodation with careers.
Yeah, careers, see their kids, they're active. We have team meetings once a month, and just to look around the room, and I ask them all to have the input, do you have anything to say, any input? And the last meeting I sat there, I'm like, oh, wow. And like the older I get, the older I get, the more of a emotional I get. Because I get so much from it from within. I sort of, my therapy is like music. I blast music really loud so my ears can almost take it, and I try to sing, but then it feels like the weight's been lifted. And I reflected that day. I was sat there looking at them all, and I'm like, wow, man. Yeah. They're priceless. Yeah. You can give me £10 million tomorrow and say, try and recreate that. Why God, I can't. No money in the world will ever give me the happiness I'm living now, and the, how can I explain it, the sort of stability I have. 5 years ago, I never anticipated this. My mum's looking at me now. I'm making her proud every day. I know I am. I speak to mum on a regular basis. And I never thought I'd have this 5 years ago, but now I got it, and more opportunities present themselves to me. Of course, I'm going to grab the bull by the horns, as long as it's for the benefit of the community and the benefit of the charity moving forward. I aim to be here within my role when I'm 70, still helping youngsters, middle-aged, old, veterans, pensioners, disabled, asylum seeker refugees, anyone from any walk of life in times of need, long as the costs are covered within the organisation. And my job is to make sure we create a revenue stream to create sustainability, not to pay high-paid managers so they can buy speedboats and fast cars and have a holiday home in France, because it's about, 1, a living wage, 2, having someone who don't feel like, oh, I've got to go work. Ask anyone on my team. it's not a job, it's a purpose in life. I mean, most mornings, 5 o'clock in the morning. I do my paperwork between 5 and 8. Most days, and I'm home by 5, 6 in the night. But then I work from home between, say, 7:30 and 10 at night. Because I spend my time with I have family time with my daughter. It's not a job, it's a purpose. Yeah. So no amount of money in the world will encourage me to go work for any other organisation because they can't give me what I got. What I have is priceless and unbuyable.
That's amazing. And I think there's that old saying, isn't there? You know, find something you love, you'll never have to work a day in your life.
Trust me, I will work for the rest of my life.
It certainly sounds like you found that. So something you mentioned earlier about some of the new projects you're looking at, particularly with children with learning difficulties. Now, before we started the broadcast, we were having a chat about your life, and you're a man, I think, who's lived many lives, Paul, and you've had such a great experience.
And my dad calls me a cat, got 9 lives.
I think there's some truth in that. So one of the things you mentioned was that you yourself were statemented and had some speech and language therapy, and it'd be really great for our audience, especially with so many disabled viewers and family members of disabled viewers, to kind of talk about that, because I think you're a real success story.
Yeah, well, one of my proudest moments in Boomerang, 3 years ago, I was able to. We do a Christmas gift appeal. Give a child a gift this Christmas. So the idea is trying to get as many kids and children to smile. For whatever reason, financial strain the families are going through, that wasn't my concern. My concern was, are you struggling for presents? Yes, there's some presents for your kid. Simple, nice, straightforward, really empowering, really impactable, job done, let's do it. And I was in a very fortunate and probably one of my proudest moments, the position I'm in, to contact my old school, Meadowbank Special School in Gibraltar. And I reached out to them and said, look, you've got lots of students, lots of pupils in your school. Could we assist? And they were like, why? I'm like, well, are you actually speaking to an ex-pupil? And at first she was like, don't believe this, like. And then She's like, can I take your number? Can I take your details? I was like, yeah, I was there when Mrs. Reese was there, and Lorraine Williams was my speech therapist. And she was like, what, how old are you now? You remember this from that far back? I'm like, yeah, trust me. Because those 2 teachers believed in me. Mm-hmm. Those 2 teachers spent time with me. And Mrs. Reese was, I remember when I was in Meadowbank, I get picked up in the Sunshine green and white bus. Yeah. And my father and my mum would wave me off. I'm one of 6 kids, they'd all wave me off. And on a Friday, I'd have not like homework they have in school. It's called a diary. And the school would write in the diary to what I was up to that week. And my father then over the weekend would write back to the school. However, on a Sunday, my father used to have a drink in the daytime to the pubs. The pubs used to be open in the day and night then. So we'd go to the airport, play some cards, the old airport pub in Trevor, play some cards, have some beers with his friends, my uncles. And then he would come home, have Sunday lunch, and he'd go back in the night. And then we would generally have like jelly and ice cream for tea. We'd play hide and seek in the house. And he'd come home on a Sunday night then, not 9:30, 10. He'd spend the next 2 hours writing like a biography on Paul's weekend. And I'll never forget the teachers saying, as Paul's diary arrived, the teachers used to look forward to the diary coming in on a Monday morning because they were like pen pals, writing back and forth to each other. And you know what? To have that memory from my childhood is truly amazing for me because I didn't have the best start in life. It depends how you look at it. It's subjective. I had difficulties. I couldn't speak. I couldn't hear properly. I had operations. I had my tonsils, my adenoids out. I had grommets put in. Speech therapy 1-to-1, several hours a day. I think it was like 26, 30 hours a month. It was quite intense. They tried me in, if you like, normal school, non-educational or special needs schools. My behaviour was quite extreme because I couldn't communicate. So instantly then, or naturally, if you're not listening to me, I know what I'm saying, but you can't pick up what I'm saying. So the pupils or my friends would get frustrated. I'd get even more frustrated. I'd pick up the closest thing to me. The rest is Paul, get to the headmaster's office. But they quickly identified, look, it's not working. So I went back to Meadowbank. I think I was about 6 then, and then it was every Monday they tried to integrate me back into the mainstream school. I'll never forget when I went there. In Meadowbank, I had no issues. I don't think ever once I was pulled up on behaviour. It was non-academic activities, I suppose. We used to do like horse riding, swimming, sports day, never forget sports day, egg and spoon races and the potato race, stuff like that, potato in a sack. And I was blessed to be able to go to that school. And as with my parents, they were blessed to be at that school took me on and give me the kickstart in life. And I've spoken to various, throughout my story, my path in Boomerang, I've teamed up with a couple of like autism puzzles, AP Cymru and stuff like that, fab organisations who do so much stuff for people with autism. And a few of them have like, they've, after meeting me for 10 minutes, they're like, "Your statement is in you. You're on the spectrum." I'm like, "How would you know that? Can they deal with it day in, day out?" And they're like, one of them, Karen, I love it a bit, her passion, her ability, what she does for her organisation, all through her own son, struggling to get a statement did. He has autism, and she's amazing, but she's always laughing and smiling and so positive. You've only got to stay in the room 10 minutes with her, all the beams off her. And she was like, "I want to give you a test." She wants to give me like an adult autism test to see where I lie now. I'm like, no chance. Because now as an adult, I don't need to be statemented. I don't need to have a label, if you like. I'm me, I'm Paul Gurnham. You either love or loathe me. Honestly, I don't care if you love or loathe me. What I do know, I love and respect myself. And nobody can take that away from me. But I'm a black and white guy. I don't like grey areas. I'm all in or all out. I miss it last because I have like these little traits. Like if I'm eating like little simple thing where most people they won't even understand, I imagine. I eat chocolate. But if I have 3 different bars of chocolate, so a Kit Kat, a Twix and a Snicker, I have to put the Twix there, the Snicker there and the Kit Kat there. It has to be in like an order. So it's symmetrical. I don't know why I do. I really don't. And there's been times where I've done it and I've got to take a bite out of that one, a bite out of that one, and a bite out.
A real order of procedures.
And my missus identified my baby was doing it at 3 years of age. She was like, "Oh my God, she's like you. She's got your traits." And I'm like, yeah, she's special like me. Because I have a purpose in life. And yes, call me special, call me love, call me what you want. I call myself lucky to be here on this planet Earth. And now I have to be here for my daughter and keep showing Mum, look, Mum, you made someone special. I'm still here. I'm still fighting the fight. One day we'll meet. But until then, I'm going to continue fighting the fight, being positive, spreading positivity, and being better today than I was yesterday. And none of us are perfect, far from it. But at least we can try to be better today than we were yesterday. And that's what it's about, really.
Amazing, Paul. There's, again, I suppose it's just that there's 9 lives, as you talk about, you're having, you're really living your best life right now. So you talk about, obviously, the communication difficulties you had and kind of going to Meadowbank, having that support. So I think everyone watching this is going to think, well, hang on, Paul's a pretty good communicator now.
I don't shut up now.
It's gone the other way.
Yeah, you're totally the other way. I've gone from doing nothing to...
You have a lot to say. So do you remember when maybe you had that breakthrough? Was it more gradual where, you went from, as you say, that kind of real frustration of struggling to be understood to kind of, as you are now, where you communicate really well and effectively?
Probably 10 o'clock this morning after speaking to my dad. He never understands me. I think I was in standard 2, standard 3, which is not standards no more. So for our younger listeners, it is year 5, year 5, year 6. I think that's when I was really integrated into the mainline school. I was able to hold a more in-depth conversation. But it wasn't until I think the confidence booster. I was boxing, I was kickboxing, I was doing karate, I was doing rugby, baseball. My parents would push me into these activities to keep my mind and my energy levels fulfilled. Almost like a like a car. If you don't put petrol in, a car's going to go flat, sit there, be grumpy, not move. After time, it'll seize up. Whereas me, I needed, put petrol in me. I wanted to get out there and burn off the energy I got. And it worked. And then through high school, okay, I was a bit naughty, down to my attention. It was never intentional naughty behaviour. It was always, I would do the work, I would then get bored, I'd then be class clown. I would never, our parents always used to say, and the teachers, you'll regret it when you leave school, the best years of your life. And we're like, yeah, whatever. Trust me, school are the best years of your life. Make the most of it now. If anyone is listening to this now, make the most of your school years. Because when you leave school, you will regret it. Because in that school, you have 200 to 500 friends, or people you can go, hi, morning, afternoon. When you leave school, sometimes you can be isolated. You can be on your own. You can feel alone. And that's not a nice place to be, no matter where you are in the world, no matter how good your life, you may seem your life is on the outside. It's sort of having an Insta life to a reality of life. Instagram, you look amazing, you look fantastic. Yeah, look how cool his or her life is. Reality, you're in a dark room in a dark place, and you want the pain to stop. So, yeah, make the most of your school life. Make the most of your life, no matter what age you are. It's never too late. And be the best you can be.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been wonderful talking to you and hearing your amazing story.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We'll make sure that our website and our YouTube videos all contain information about Boomerang Cardiff, so people can get in touch, see how they can help with the projects that you're running, and hopefully many more in the future. But Paul, thank you for your time.
No, thank you so much, and thank you for listening.
Well, what do you say about that? I mean, what a great story, Chris.
It was a genuine joy to sit down with Paul and speak to him. He's such an enthusiastic and positive character, despite all the challenges, real low ebbs that he was talking about, with his mental health and things. To see him come out this other side and live the life he's living.
So much for so many people.
It's incredible. Yeah. It is absolutely incredible, and it was wonderful to see the joy that he takes in it, and how much it inspires him on a daily basis, and obviously inspires others as well. So it was fantastic.
And if you want to know more about Boomerang, some information will come up in the description, tell you about it. You can maybe make some donations, maybe go along and visit yourself. It's a great place. Meet Paul. He's fantastic. Well, thank you very much. Well, Chris, the other thing I wanted to talk about,
yes,
which we are going to be talking about further on in the episodes, is the EALN Act, which I can never get out.
No.
My words. This new legislation, which is applying to Wales, came about, and we were all excited about it. One of the primary things I was really excited about was the idea of extending the provision up to the age of 25. I mean, that's the one big thing. That's one of the reasons why the Children and Families Act came out.
Yes.
Because of two cases that I got involved with, made a real big waves, didn't it, with the government about what the government should do for people beyond the age of school. What are they doing wrong here, Chris, in Wales? What are we missing?
Well, I think the difficulty is that with the implementation, and we'll put a link to the current implementation guidance because it's too long to go through here in any detail. But as is always the case with the implementation of new laws, you want it to come in on a staggered basis. So you're not dealing with all cases at once. So it's not like all statements, as they were here in Wales and continue to be for some people, are kind of invalid overnight. You stagger them. With the Children and Families Act, they started with children facing transition years, as you recall, of course, and then they were slowly integrating them to the new education healthcare plans. Obviously now everyone in England has an education healthcare plan. I don't think anyone's still got a statement in England, but do write in if you have one. That'd be fascinating to find out. But they should all be gone now. Obviously that's been enforced now for 8 years this year. And, they had that kind of graduated process. In Wales, obviously it was postponed a year because of COVID and the challenges around that. And again, it was staggered again in September. I think some of the difficulties have arisen around the delay that was getting out the technical guidance for implementation, and the fact it didn't seem very clear, even after September, when the law technically came into force for very new cases, people who were not known to have additional learning needs before. It's still now staggering in. And one of the classes of people that aren't incorporated are those 16 or in further education, which, as you say, is unfortunate, because that was one of the really big changes that was coming in. And again, in the Children and Families Act, those were some of the people targeted first, the people who would lapse out of the old law. Well, let's capture them in this new law. And unfortunately, they've kept them under the old law, which is the Learning and Skills Act, which is not that effective. And they don't have the right
to go to tribunal, do they?
No, they don't, and that is a problem, I think.
So it's really applying. I mean, for our viewers, it's trying to understand how a panel determines these questions, applying really judicial review principles to a decision that might have been made for the benefit or detriment of a child, of a young person, I should say. It's not easy to challenge there, isn't it, when you're looking at what did that decision maker fail to take into account. And those were the real problems that we all had in the old law when it was applicable in England. We still got this old law applicable still in Wales for the very group that needed to benefit the most from the reforms.
Yeah.
That very group is the one that's missing out. I mean, I think it's a dreadful shame.
It is a shame. I mean, I can understand the logic of it because, of course, the planning, as you well know, and as many of our listeners will know, for transition post-16 should occur from year 9 onwards. So I think the idea was, well, actually, the people who are now 16, this year or, coming to the end of their course this year and possibly next year, they'd have already started that process. And why should we change that midway? Will that be more confusing than not? So you can see the logic in it. But I think half the problem that I've come up with certain clients, again, this is anecdotal, it might not be indicative of the wider population, but they aren't necessarily as far advanced in that learning and skills process as they would have been. A lot of them don't seem to have plans or don't seem to know that they're having plans coming. And that's a concern. And I'm not sure if because there wasn't really that much clarity about who would get the implementation first, whether some of the people involved in that learning and skills process perhaps weren't necessarily progressing with cases as quickly, or of course they may have had delays to their own services because of COVID. And now we're getting some people without the plans, going to their respective colleges or hoping to go to their respective colleges and falling between two stools. So
just for the sake of just practical explanation to the viewers, a 16-year-old now is due to finish school this coming August. Under the current law as applicable in Wales, that 16-year-old will not get the benefit, should they go on to college, of the new IDP.
So I think the better way of putting it is not right now, because they will obviously come into the system when it transitions to that age group. But of course, right now, obviously, the plan is that they would continue with the learning and skills assessment and plan that they should already be doing as part of their kind of transition review. So,
will that extinguish their rights, Chris?
In what sense?
In other words, if you get a learning and skills plan beyond the age of 16, is that the thing that you carry with you until you're 25, or will the IDB kick in?
It's not a question that I think has been tested as yet. I think it's one of those questions, as we ever get, is that for most people that still probably will work out fine. In the sense that you're not getting any worse a deal than perhaps you were expecting previously, because you would have gone to college. Obviously, you and I have sent children and young people to specialist colleges, a number of very capable specialist colleges with learning and skills plans. So again, there's no need for alarm if it already sounds like you're getting what you want out of that process. And again, there's still a lot of uncertainty around IDPs in further educational colleges, obviously their preparedness to kind of implement those strategies. So in some ways, going under the old system may be beneficial to you. It's unclear to see. But I think that the rule of thumb is if you have any concerns, just take some legal advice at that point, because every case is very niche. The transition plans are changing regularly. We've had different implementation strategies that were mooted kind of pre-September, post-September. So where you have a new piece of legislation, it's always really important to find out where you sit specifically, because what you may or where you may think you are, or what class of individuals you may think you fall into, may not actually be the case. Ironically, one of the strangest situations is I was instructed by a number of people who are in the pilot schemes for individual development plans. And yet, when they came into force in September, when the Act came into force for some people, they weren't actually part of that cohort. Technically, because they were known to have plans, they didn't come into force until January. So the pilot scheme had a plan, and technically it wasn't enforceable under the Act until 3 months after implementation. So again, you would almost assume if you've got an ID plan, or certainly did in September, I'm definitely in the new law. There's no way I'm in the old law.
But if you want to try and get this, you've determined where you're going, and you'll get your learning and skills plan, and it will actually identify your placement. The difficulty, I think, what I'm struggling with, and I have great difficulty with, is when there is a dispute in relation to the contents of that document. I've seen, as you have, lots of these plans are hopeless. And so when it comes to deciding what the college or what the provision should be, generally, there's a lack of specificity.
Yes.
And you've got no right then, if you are, in this cohort, not caught by this new legislation, you haven't got the right to go to your tribunal to resolve that conflict. And that's what I'm struggling with. I think that's when I say it's a shame, I think it's disgraceful that this is the very group of people who needed the support most, and they are being denied for another, I don't know how long.
Yeah.
And that worries me.
No, it is a concern, and I completely understand and appreciate those concerns. As you say, the learning and skills plan was never really equivalent to a statement under the old system, and of course is still not going to be equivalent to an IDP right now. I think it's just one of those things I say. For some people, it will still or for most people, I imagine, it'll still work out fine. You probably will end up with the same level of support. However, there will be those who, as you say, where actually the right to appeal to a tribunal and maybe get better specificity of provision would be very helpful. As you say, there's still the right through judicial review, or possibly through other mechanisms, maybe even complaint, that you can try to improve the standard of the plan or the standard of support that you're receiving. But again, I think at that stage, you might want to look at, well, okay, what is my status within the transition plan to the new law? Will I end up being grandfathered in at a certain stage of my education, or am I likely to stay on the learning and skills plan? And so it's good for the individual cases to take that direct advice, because the problem is what's great for the majority may not be right for that individual. And that's where you and I exist, isn't it? In that kind of on the margins cases.
I wish I wasn't so busy, Chris.
Yes.
It'd be a lot better if I wasn't so busy.
It's a busy time.
It's a busy time.
It is a busy time.
Well, there is so much coming up, isn't there? And I hope you've enjoyed this first episode, introductory episode to Series 2 of the Education magazine. And as I say, there's a lot in store. We're going to be talking to parents, we're going to be talking to children, we're going to be talking to professionals. We're going to hear a lot about the implementation of the Welsh legislation, and we're going to hear some of the naughty tricks that are going on in England, Chris.
Oh, very exciting.
Naughty tricks that local authorities are playing. We see them quite often.
We do, unfortunately. We do.
The failure to comply with basic requirements at annual reviews, for example, we'll see some of that. So there's going to be a lot we're going to be covering in Series 2, and we're going to be talking, as I say, to some inspirational people. So for me, it's been a pleasure having Chris here in the studio again for the first time for some time, and it's been a pleasure meeting Paul, and I hope you've enjoyed meeting him, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon in episode number 2 of Series 2. So thanks very much for watching, and look forward to seeing you again.